Hello and welcome to another episode of Sermon Braindump. My name is Scott Dalen, an ELCA pastor in Southwest Iowa, and I present these videos every week for a couple of different reasons. The first of which is to take my brain out of the mode of background work over the course of the week and move into the process of actually writing and preparing the sermon that I will preach to my congregation for the weekend. That's the first. And the second is just to allow you, the viewer who have come across this video for whatever reason brought you here today, whether you're a regular viewer who tunes in every week because you're a subscriber, which makes you awesome, or if you just happen to stumble across this random crazy pastor sitting in his office talking about the gospel lesson, and you have no idea what you're in for, which is also awesome. But for any of you to gain some different insight into the assigned text for the week. So that is why I do these. Now, this particular Sunday is a big one. Easter Sunday. It is April 21st, 2019. The Resurrection of our Lord Sunday is the official name. But Easter, the celebration of Jesus coming out of the tomb, risen after his death on the cross on Good Friday, which, interestingly enough, as I record this, is today. Weird headspace to be in right now. I'm coming off of Maundy Thursday last night as we focused in on the goodbye of the Last Supper. Today is Good Friday, when we actually will gather later on this evening to remember and experience the Passion narrative as things grow darker. So that will be happening this evening. So that's in my head right now. And I'm also thinking about the joy of Easter morning that's coming up 2 days from now as I record this, but that's what this is for. So the fact that I've just said about 187 words in one breath is probably an indication that I'm kind of pumped up and excited about it. I love it. Holy Week is wonderful. It's a haul. There's a lot going on, but it's of course one of my favorite times of the year. This particular year, we are in Luke's gospel, and so we have Luke's account of the resurrection. It comes out of Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. What I love about the resurrection, of course, is it's one of those super important, in fact, probably the most important story that we have from the Gospels. And for those big important ones, we know they usually show up in all four Gospels, this one included. This is one of those rare stories that is present in all four. And for the most part, they've got pretty similar details, although, of course, there are differences. And that's kind of what I'll probably be highlighting into today. But before we go any farther, let's go ahead and read it, and then we'll get into it. One thing that I think is important, and I might back up, I've done this before with this particular passage when it's come up for Easter, of including the last couple of verses of the previous chapter, because they're important for kind of a setting. So I'm going to do that too. So this, where we start, is actually the end of chapter 23. And it's in the setting. This is actually happening Good Friday. So this is right after Jesus has died. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed. They saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath, that being Saturday, they rested according to the commandment. And then now into chapter 24. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood before them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words. And returning from the tomb, they told all of this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen clothes by themselves, and then he went home amazed at what had happened. All right, so that's the story. So I started off, it's important to realize that these women, they're the ones who remained at the cross. All the disciples had fled at various points, so they were all gone, but these women were standing there. They watched Jesus die. They watched as his body was taken down. They watched where it was laid. And that's important because then these same women prepared the spices. They know that they're going to anoint the body when they are allowed to post Sabbath. And then as soon as there's light, that's why they go first thing on Sunday morning. Sunday's first day of the week. The Jewish Sabbath is on Saturday. And even though the Sabbath ends at sundown Saturday night, they can't see, no modern lighting. So they wait till the first thing Sunday morning to go and anoint his body. One of the things we don't get here in Luke is the question of who's going to open the tomb for us. They had seen the stone put in front of the tomb. Luke doesn't seem to care that the women ask the question, how are we going to get in there? That's present in some of the other gospel accounts, but not so much here. But when they get there, they find the stone's already gone. Or not gone, but it's rolled away. So the tomb is open, and they're able to go in, which they do, expecting to find the wrapped up body of Jesus laying there because he was dead. They saw him put there. Logic says he's still going to be there. But that's not what they find. They find the empty tomb and only the grave cloths laying there. And so they're kind of like, what's going on here? We hear that they're perplexed. And I don't know if that's the right way to describe this. Who knows exactly what emotion or what questions they were asking at this, because this defies all logic. Logic says the dude was dead. There's no coming back from that. He should still be there. So if he's not, it means somebody probably stole his body. But where is he? What is happening? And as in their state of being perplexed, these two angels show up. Or as we hear, two men in dazzling clothes, which kind of sounds like the transfiguration that had happened earlier when Jesus' clothes became dazzling white. Same stuff. Okay, anyway. So clearly whatever this is a moment of the divine. Whoever these angels, we assume they're angels, there's something divine that's happening, or the divine in their nature. And they come in. The women are freaked out. They fall to the ground face down, which tends to be the reaction of people when they experience the divine. But now here's a point that I find interesting. Almost every other time in the narrative of the scriptures, and particularly in the New Testament, when we hear of an angel showing up, the first thing the angel almost always says is fear not, or do not be afraid, or whatever, because the people are so freaked out. I don't know what it is about angels other than that which is divine, because angels have a sense of the divine about them, or the heavenly. Maybe that's a better way of saying it, because they're not God, but they've got a heavenly sense about them that is maybe just freaky. It's too much for us to handle, and it's scary because we're scared of that which we do not understand, both in a good way and a bad way. But so they freak out, but we don't hear do not be afraid. We hear the question, almost seemingly to be astonishment on the part of the angels. Why do you look for the living among the dead? It's almost like he's alive, duh. Remember he told you? And I love that aspect. Remember his words. Remember that remember that he told you while still in Galilee, he would be handed over to sinners. He would be crucified, and on the third day he told you this multiple times. Don't you remember? And with that, the women remember. And they're in their joy of remembering, they don't see the resurrected Jesus. That's another difference here in Luke. Some of the other gospels, as they go, they actually encounter the risen Jesus. We hear that in Matthew, and then it's present in John. Mark doesn't. They just run off. That's the end of the gospel. But they don't encounter the risen Jesus here. The women don't. But they run off to tell the disciples, who are the very ones who are like, Jesus told them too. They'll remember. We'll go tell them. And they do. They go and they report it. The women are the first preachers, the first ones to bear the good news of the resurrected Jesus. So yay for them. Awesome. Side note, I keep saying or seeing, and I think it's funny, that to be biblically correct, we need to make sure that it's a woman in the pulpit who's declaring the risen Jesus. So I might step out of the way and ask if there's any ladies who want to come in and do the biblical job of declaring that Jesus is raised. I think I like that idea. Takes the pressure off me to write a sermon. Yay. Okay, sorry. I went off on a tangent there. But the women follow the calling, follow what they're supposed to do. They go off and they tell the disciples, and we hear that the disciples think it's an idle tale. They do not believe. It's called belief in the Greek is pistes. It's apistes, as in like anti-pistes, anti-belief. That sounds fun. Anti-pistes. Anti-belief. They in their unbelief. They think it's an idle tale, which is a really nice way of Luke of telling us they thought the women were spewing bullshit. Pardon my French. But that's what it is. And the only one who can even be bothered to get up and go look at things is Peter. And Peter heads off to the tomb, and he looks in and sees the empty tomb. no angels, but he sees the empty tomb. And we hear that he marvels and he walks away. Now, it said in here that he goes home. I don't know why it says home, because that's not in the original language. He just leaves and in a state of marveling, like he's perplexed. He's got that going on too. Just amazed at what had happened. So, and that's the end of it. Now, what also continues to happen, and we'll hear it in the upcoming weeks, just the way the lectionary breaks up the rest of the story for us. So we've got the road to Emmaus, where Jesus appears to two of the disciples, not two of the 12, but two of the disciples. And then they go back, and we hear that he's at some point during the day has appeared to Peter. And then as they're all together, Jesus appears again to them there. And they still don't believe it. Even when they are face to face with the resurrected Jesus, it's not until he eats something that they finally begin to believe, oh man, this is real. So, there's so much happening here. It's like, why didn't they believe it? Why did the women believe it when the men didn't? Why did the disciples, who had heard the exact same proclamation from Jesus 3 times, and probably more than that, but 3 times that we have in the scriptures, that he will be betrayed and he will be killed, but he will be raised again? Why do they not believe it until they come literally face to face with him and see him eat some fish? That, why don't they get it? But they don't. And so what I'm keep coming around to here is a couple of different things. One, the angel does not say, do not be afraid. It goes right into the good news of like, why do you look for the living among the dead? You're in the place of the dead, and he's not here because he's alive. Yes, he was dead, but he's not anymore. And yes, that's mind-blowing. And it defies all logic. And the joy that comes with it, the joy that we have in the promise of the resurrection, both through Jesus as well as the promise that we have been made heirs to that same resurrection, through our baptism into Christ. All of this is unexplainable joy. It defies logic. It defies our ability to comprehend. It defies our ability to explain. And yet, through the power of the Holy Spirit, we are given the promise and we're given the gift of faith in this good news that not only is this true for Jesus, but that Jesus has made it true for us too. And that good news is so great that the angels can't even be bothered with don't be afraid. They're just like, let's get into this because this is great. What I love about the reaction of the women, they see the empty tomb. They see the lack of the dead body among the dead. They don't see the living Jesus, but they are reminded through proclamation, and granted it's angelic proclamation, but through proclamation of, remember, he has been raised. And they believe it. And that is such an important message for us on Easter in 2019, and every single Easter really, that we have not seen the risen Jesus either. Like the women, we have not seen him. And yet we have heard the proclamation. We have been reminded of his words, that he has spoken to all of us through the power of the Holy Spirit acting through the scriptures. We have heard that proclamation from Jesus. We are reminded of the proclamation from one another. And that's where the faith comes from. That's how we believe it, that somehow he was dead and now he's not dead anymore. Defies logic, but that's what we believe. And that's where I'm going with this sermon, is that's the reality. That's where we're at today. And like the women, we are called to also be witnesses to the resurrection, to carry that good news forward so that others who have heard it before can hear it again and be reminded so that they can remember and cling to it. That's what we share with the women, and we need to learn from their example. So that's what's happening with this sermon. I feel like I haven't taken a breath for the last 14 minutes because, hey, it's Easter and that's like the Super Bowl for me. So, hey, yay. If you have thoughts, questions, comments, throw them down in the comment section. We'll continue the conversation that way. Otherwise, I hope you have a blessed rest of your Holy Week, a blessed Easter, a time of celebration with those that you care about. And as always, I do these videos as an outreach of the congregation that I serve. It's a ministry of the congregation that I serve. If you feel that you have benefited from these videos and you would like to support the ministry that allows me to do that, look down in the comment section. I will put the link to my congregation's website, and you can follow and you can support that financially if you feel led. No pressure if you don't. But if you do, it would be much appreciated. Have a wonderful week, and we will catch you next time.